Hi, I'm Fasti Questorf. I am the Executive Director of Klamath Film, and with me today is Karina Ripper. Karina is the creative mind behind Visions, which is playing at the 11th Annual Klamath Independent Film Festival. Karina, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Casty.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just such like a visually stunning like film to watch, and it immerses you completely into each of the artists' artistry, really. And a big part about it is, the first generation artists and how culture really influences their art. So how did you come about this theme, and how did you also meet these artists that you wanted to feature?
Yeah, thank you so much for those kind words. The film itself was shot by Rodrigo Melgarejo, who's based here in Portland, and he really brought the visual eye to the piece. I think the film itself wouldn't have been possible without the producer, Fran Batakis. Um, she's a dear friend of mine, and she and I, were meeting, and I knew that I wanted to do. I have a previous documentary that I've done about a couple of letterpress printers, and so I really like profiling artists. And so I was talking with Fran about doing another documentary about artists and trying to figure out where to center the film around. And I'm Mexican American. My parents are both from Mexico, and Fran is Thai American, and so she was the one that really suggested the idea of focusing on first generation or immigrant experienced artist. And I really love that idea because I feel like it's something that if you are first generation, finding artists or knowing of artists or knowing what their experiences are like, it feels like it's kind of a hidden thing. And so finding those people can really kind of open it up to you to just hear their stories and not feel so alone in navigating this a field that can be predominantly white. And so that's kind of where it started. And then Fran is just an incredible community connected person. And so she, brought me a list of people, a list of artists, and I went through the list, and I really wanted to focus on people that were from different backgrounds, different experiences, but also different crafts. And I think that's how I ended up with these three individuals. I was just blown away by their work, but also just really connected with them all in their experiences to finding their art and craft, and felt kind of like it was like a thing where like not all of our experiences were similar in certain ways, but I kind of like loved that about it. I loved how varied they all were in their journeys to finding their art or their experiences with their parents or community. So yeah, it was a really fun project to pull together.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. And you just kind of touched on this a little bit, but I mean, your film weaves together intimate stories of these artists, and they're all different, but it all really does come together. So can you share some insights into your storytelling process and how you approach blending all these different narratives into a cohesive tapestry that you created?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure, I feel like it was, you know, the film. I think there was like a part of me that like you know, started with a place with just like having like general questions I was interested in. But then I always knew that I wanted to like showcase the work. And so that was kind of something that, you know, once I started to meet with the artist, we started to like kind of collaborate on like how can we showcase these pieces of work that you do, and what's the best way to both like include, honor it, but also like expand on the visual medium. For example, with Naomi, like her paintings, it's a very flat thing. So like, how do we bring dimensionality to that? And she, I think, had suggested this like acrylic or like a glass. And so we were like, yes, like that would be amazing to just see you paint through. And so that we just started like riffing on ideas there. And then I think with Poppy, it was like similarly, I was like, I want to see you on a grand stage, rocking out on those drums.
Yes.
And Poppy was like, suggested Portland Center Stage, and reached out to them, and they were very accommodating to allowing us to film there. Um, so that was kind of my process is very collaborative. I I am very much a person that likes to bring together talented people. I feel like when we all work together to, communicate one idea, one vision, it's a stronger piece. And so that's my style. Certainly, once I got into the edit, I worked with editor Matt Hogan, based here in Portland, and I like knew from working with him on commercial jobs, like he was like this kind of like he could edit things really like fast and kind of like had the skills to like weave together the stories. So we worked together pretty closely for about a month, just like laying down the groundwork and then like putting in the visuals. And I feel like the other aspect was working with like Mel Gearson, who did the score, and she just like knocked it out of the park. I think there was like this part of me that like, you know, being a creative, being an artist, there's like these moments where there's so much excitement about what you're doing. And I like was like, how do I communicate that in a film? Like that's what these artists are going through in this moment. And I feel like with the editing and with the music and the sound design, like they all worked together to like create this like emotional sort of feeling where you're just like excited and amped up about making art. And yeah, it was a collective effort. But yeah, I think we were all on the same page because everybody I'm working with is an artist in some way. So
Totally. I love that because it almost feels like slightly meta because you're bringing your art as a filmmaker into this while also sharing their artist story. And there's so much that goes into it and so much personal side too. So how do you almost balance that where you really want to showcase like their artistry and their story without kind of infringing a bit where you're like, I mean, this is my style too and stuff. And also, I mean, you mentioned the score too, and that really adds these different personalities too to each person's story, where we hear different things and we feel different ways based on what they're presenting with their art.
yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, I guess I would say like it's communication.
Yeah, yeah, collaboration, communication, and I mean,
Yeah.
also the mark of a good storyteller and sharing a
Yeah.
story is just like respecting what they have while also bringing what you can bring to the table.
I think I think I fell in love with all three of these artists. And I think that like, that was like maybe that was part of it is like getting to know them to me is like part of the joy of making a film, is like who are the subjects coming from a place of like mad respect. And yeah, and I think in that way it's like and listening to them and really like yeah, just trying to do my best to like include them in the process. Like I think there were times where I was like, this is, what I'm thinking visually, these are the colors, like informing them. And I think like the nice part was like I did have a piece prior that I'd done. So they had something you could reference
Sure.
kind of like to just kind of know, okay, this is what she's done before. Like has some chops in this space. So it wasn't too far of a reach to be making something like this. But I think, yeah, just like overall, you know, I I feel that way. I feel like the other aspect was like even in the team that I work with, like the people like Mel, for example, the composer, Poppy had played the drums, and Mel's a talented musician, and she basically took his drums and then wrote the music with the drum beat, and it just was
Wow.
like so even having that artist come in and be collaborative, I think is like part of the community that I like to bring together, is that people are like open to listening to each other, open to finding ways that two ideas can make something that's more powerful. I think to me, like that's the fun mix that I like to get in with filmmaking. And yeah, and I think like ego aside, it's not. It's like it's more about like how can we all together like make the best best work for the resources that we have. So I don't know, that's kind of like, but also I think there's an aspect of this that like this project particularly because it was kind of like more about the journey. Like there's the end product that was created, but there was a lot of intention that Fran and I made with like who we hired and became a part of the production. Um, and that, you know, meant there was like a lot of like learning for people to open up the space and create opportunities. But it also just like enriched behind the scenes having a lot of first and second generation Americans. Um, we were all like sharing experiences of entering the film industry. You know, like how did your parents, what did your mom say when you told her? Like it was like, you know, that was like happening on set, and it was, and you know, or during the interviews, like we'd take a break and there would be like communication, you know, with like our sound person Betty, who was like also Mexican American, and you know, just sharing of stories of pursuing art and craft as a career. And um I don't know, I found that to also just be like a really beautiful aspect of like folding that into like the journey, because I feel like filmmaking is such a long journey.
Totally. Totally.
it's, it's nice to actually put intention behind how that process shapes up. Even though I know that, you know, a lot of time there's a lot of pressure about what the final thing is. I think that there's like other aspects of this work that like can be beautiful too.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love how you put that. And I mean, well, so when you were describing this film, you kind of said it comes out of like a fever dream, and it's this beautiful dreamlike quality to it. And you're talking about the journey. So how did you kind of balance it being this dreamlike beauty art, while also acknowledging their journeys and also kind of staying grounded in reality? You know, a lot of films have like the rising and the falling action and everything, but how do you create this such encapsulating story, while it really focusing on that journey?
yeah, I mean, I gosh, I feel like it's like, I don't know, I guess like there's this aspect where like I feel like storytelling is so much, I feel like it's like ingrained in all of us in some ways because we've all like read books and watched movies and TV shows our whole lives. So you kind of like can just feel it, but I think I just kind of I knew that like I wanted to set up the backstory first for the characters, and I wanted to go through the struggle, like the challenges of that,
Mhm.
whether that be like community or family or internal, because I think they're always there for artists. And then I wanted to put all that aside and just focus on art making and the joy of that. And I think that like what was fascinating to me, I think Vovo says something that I just like, you know, will all like I will always remember because it's in the film, but it's also just like so powerful to me. Is this, you know, there's always this idea that like like our culture like can sometimes establish like what we make as artists, but there's also this idea that it's not really doing that thing, that we just made it up. Like we're putting that weight on it ourselves when it's actually not there. And I just like really love that because it frees me up to be like, it can be there, it cannot be there, it can like, you know, it's something you can't necessarily like help. And I feel that way about like how the film took its shape. I think there's a part of me that's like, it feels a little bit like top heavy, like because by the time it gets to the end, it's just this huge like building, 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 and then a little like fizzle. Like it doesn't like I didn't want to let you fizzle for too long. I've always described myself as a person that has like a volcano inside of me. So I'm like constantly just like, ah.
Ah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I love how you point that out because that was also something that I really took away from the film as well. So is there anything that you do hope people take away after watching Visions, or any particular story or theme that you hope people get out of it?
You know, it's, I think like My hope is that like it really connects to people who are immigrant or first generation or second generation artists, that like I think I made it for them as much as I made it for myself. And that way that like, you know, you're not alone. Like your challenges might be different from these three artists, but like keep going, like keep finding that joy, because it is liberating. And I think that for people that aren't those, you know, of an immigrant experience, like I would say like create space, uplift, you know, like
Absolutely.
be an ally for those artists, support them, and because what they're doing and what they have to say is like freaking amazing.
I love it. Oh, that's awesome, Karina. And yeah, absolutely. Just kind of taking that joy and spreading it in the world. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about is sharing your love and your passions. And that impassions other people and it sparks joy in other people. So the importance in doing that and sharing these different stories and giving a voice to people. So yeah, Karina, well, thank you so much for chatting with us today. We so appreciate it. We're so excited to have Visions in the Klamath Independent Film Festival. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.